Greetings to the New Horizon Updates channel. We're thrilled to welcome you to our community. Stay tuned for frequent updates and embark on this journey of discovery towards new horizons with us. The volatile situation between Israel and Hamas has taken an unexpected turn as the Palestine Liberation Army, PLA, has cornered Hamas militiamen in the Gaza Strip. Gazans are now faced with an additional threat from the Israel Defense Forces, who have recommended inhabitants to relocate to the south. This situation has caused many Gazans to take to the streets, while some have decided to stay in the city, ignoring IDF warnings. It's crucial to highlight that the majority of Palestinians are against Hamas's war on Israel, choosing to leave the city rather than back the militant group. Hamas, on the other hand, has opted for an aggressive approach, engaging in looting and forcibly recruiting many Palestinians, primarily those without homes, into their military. This triggered violence against those who resisted recruitment. The Palestinian Authority's patience with Hamas wore thin, notably when they barred citizens from leaving the city before an imminent Israeli airstrike. As a result, the subsequent Israeli airstrike left those desiring to leave trapped within city limits, increasing resentment towards Hamas's leadership. This tension between Hamas and the Palestinian populace eventually led to a proclamation from Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, asserting that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Instead, he stressed that this role belongs to the Palestine Liberation Organization. The PLA, the PLO's military arm, stated its aim to fight Hamas and remove its forces from the Gaza Strip, culminating in a standoff between PLA soldiers and Hamas fighters, resulting in violent conflicts in Al-Mazar and significant harm to a Hamas military outpost. During these conflicts, over 60 Hamas soldiers at the police station lost their lives, and PLA soldiers helped stranded Palestinian citizens to leave, with thousands reported to have moved to the south. The Palestine Liberation Army, established in 1964, with Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser's support, has significant backing in its clash with Hamas. Even as these conflicts raged, attacks on Israel from Lebanese territory increased, with Hezbollah stepping up its offensive. Israeli officials have hinted at a potential second war front by suggesting war on Lebanon to address the ongoing tensions with Hamas and the growing Hezbollah threat. Amid these circumstances, whether Hezbollah, with Iran's backing, will engage in a war with Israel is yet to be seen. The Israeli army has announced the evacuation of inhabitants from 28 settlements and towns near the Lebanese border, arranging for them to move to safer locations. This comes as Hezbollah claims a major impending attack on Israel. Israel's readiness to respond if Hezbollah initiates a war on a second front has been emphasized by the Israeli National Security Advisor Sa'ar Hanegi, who also warned that such a conflict could escalate throughout the Middle East. In response to Hanegi's statements, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin urged Israel to hold off from attacking Hezbollah, prompting a response from the Israeli army. Stay tuned to New Horizon updates for more on this developing story. Amid the tense situation between Israel and Hamas, an important development has taken place involving the Palestine Liberation Army, PLA. The PLA has surrounded Hamas forces within the Gaza Strip, creating a complicated scenario. Israel Defense Forces, IDF, have suggested Gaza's inhabitants move southward, and numerous Gazans have responded, although some have chosen to stay despite the warnings. Many Palestinians have decided to exit the city rather than support Hamas's conflict with Israel. Nevertheless, Hamas has adopted an antagonistic attitude, resorting to theft and forcibly enlisting Palestinians, especially those without homes. This heightens the tension with the Palestinian community. Importantly, the PLA, the military wing of the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, has publicly declared its aim to battle Hamas and remove its forces from the Gaza Strip. This has led to clashes with Hamas forces and substantial damage to a Hamas military station. The PLA, established in 1964 with assistance from Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, has backing for its face-off with Hamas. Israel has stationed tanks near the border, and a projected ground operation against Gaza is expected to align with the PLA's actions. At the same time, there has been a surge in attacks on Israel from Lebanese territory, with Hezbollah escalating its campaign. The Israeli army is advocating for the evacuation of homes near the Lebanese border to thwart Hezbollah's infiltration. In retaliation to Hamas attacks, the IDF has executed significant air and ground assaults in Gaza, with naval forces also participating in this conflict for the first time. The Israeli Navy has utilized high-tech ships, the Sa'ar-6 corvettes, to target Hamas facilities, weapon production, and naval commando positions, effectively blockading Hamas by land and sea. Simultaneously, the United States has sent a rapid response team to waters off the Israeli coast to deter Iran and Hezbollah. There are ongoing attempts to reopen the Rafah border, crossing with Egypt to allow for humanitarian aid and the evacuation of foreign passport holders. However, diplomatic efforts to progress in this area have been unsuccessful. Meanwhile, the humanitarian situation is worsening, with civilians suffering due to the blockade. Israel maintains that the blockade will continue until Hamas releases captives taken on October 7th. In summary, the region is in a state of escalated tension, with several geopolitical dynamics, like the involvement of the PLA, Hezbollah, and the global community. Stay tuned to New Horizon updates for the latest developments. Amidst the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, the humanitarian situation in Gaza remains dire. Sameh Shoukry, Egypt's foreign minister, emphasized the necessity of alleviating the suffering of Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Ineffective discussions with Israel have led Cairo to concentrate on sending humanitarian aid to Gazans affected by the conflict. The potential for medical evacuations and the issuing of travel permits to some Gazans is currently being considered by Egypt. Countries such as the United States and the United Kingdom have suggested that their citizens move towards the Rafah border crossing in preparation for a potential reopening. The crisis has resulted in significant loss of life and displacement, with figures suggesting over 2,750 people have been killed and more than 1 million displaced in Gaza. Efforts to reopen the Rafah border crossing are underway, but there has been little progress. Throughout these developments, the conflict persists, with Israel maintaining its offensive against Hamas and Hezbollah. Several efforts are being made to secure the release of hostages and provide humanitarian aid to Palestinian civilians. Notably, a long-range rocket was fired by Hamas from the Gaza Strip, aimed at the Galilee region in northern Israel. Using the David Sling medium-range air defense system, Israel intercepted the rocket, marking the first use of this system during the current conflict. 2 fires were also ignited due to shrapnel fragments in the area. Rockets continue to strike southern Israel, causing damage to residential properties. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, targeted numerous drone launch sites located on the rooftops of residential buildings in Gaza, from which Hamas had launched several drones towards Israel. He is currently preparing for a large-scale ground offensive in the Gaza Strip, with Israeli tanks, armored personnel carriers, and self-propelled howitzers positioned along the Gaza border. Over 1 million Palestinians in northern Gaza have been requested to evacuate by the IDF. This has created difficulties, as some Palestinians are heeding the warnings to move south, while attempts to halt the evacuation are being made by Hamas. The United Nations has warned of potential disaster from the mass evacuation and called for urgent humanitarian aid. Israel has stated that the bombings of Gaza are just the start of their response, contributing to the complexity and deep concern surrounding the situation. U.S. President Joe Biden stressed the urgency of addressing the humanitarian situation in Gaza. He pointed out that the majority of Palestinians are not affiliated with Hamas and are suffering as a result. The dangerous escalation of the situation has also been expressed concern over by UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, who joined the calls for urgent humanitarian aid. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated that the bombings in Gaza were only the start of Israel's response. This is New Horizon Updates channel bringing you the latest news as it unfolds. The situation in Gaza has escalated dramatically. An order to evacuate rapidly under such challenging conditions is seen as nearly impossible by 8 agencies. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, more than 450,000 people have relocated at least once since the last weekend. New Horizon Updates acknowledges the difficulty in Palestinians complying with evacuation orders. The conflict has resulted in devastating casualties, leading some to describe it as a significant moment in Palestine's history. In response, Israel has launched extensive airstrikes on Gaza, mobilized an unprecedented number of reservists, and amassed tanks near the border in preparation for a significant ground offensive. This forthcoming attack will be a significant moment in Israel's long-standing conflict with Hamas. The violence also affected other areas, with clashes between Palestinians and Israeli settlers and army personnel in occupied East Jerusalem and the West Bank, resulting in several deaths. Tensions have escalated, and it is reported that Hezbollah may become involved in the conflict if Israel proceeds with a ground offensive on Gaza. Civilians in Gaza have been left with no safe place to go, stirring discussions about providing humanitarian aid. However, the proposal of creating safe corridors for refugees has been rejected. Protests have unfolded globally against Israel's action in Gaza, with demonstrations and rallies held in various countries in support of the Palestinian people. The conflict in the Middle East has captured global attention and elicited a significant response from people around the world. I'm overjoyed for your presence here, viewing this content from New Horizon Updates. We look forward to your continued patronage. Appreciate your time.